Greetings, Waste Warriors, to the Special Subcommittee of the Solid Waste Group. This is September 9. Yeah, September 9 it is. And let me read a quick disclaimer. This meeting of the Solid Waste Subcommittee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order number 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the community in light of the coronavirus. Need a motion and a second.
Second. 1
and 2. Rachel, run through the roll, please. Looks like we have a full house.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. All right, gentlemen, we are about halfway through our RFI questions and potential scope. I believe Vice Chair Piercy left off, and actually we went through the transportation, or did we cut short just prior? So we need to discuss transportation tonight. And I hope you're prepared so we can move quickly through this. And remember, we're looking for yes or no answers to some of the questions Becky has proposed to us to see if we want to include those in the RFI description. So let's open up with transportation. And under those 3 bullet trains, we have 3 ways of transporting. That would be truck, train, and barge, which barge may be a little tough in our neck of the woods, but the first 2, certainly. Open it up for comments. Jump right in.
Mr. Chairman, I think co-chair last week had a good idea that we had Mac and Becky speak first, didn't we? Kind of share their thoughts as the professionals in the room. So if that's okay with you, perhaps
Sure.
we could do that.
And then you guys just piggybacked off their thoughts. Fantastic. Mac, is that okay with you? Becky? Beauty before brains, is that what you're saying? All right, gotcha. I see that on your lips there, Mac. So.
I would just say that with the transportation piece, you do have choice truck, train, or barge. Obviously, here in Rutherford County, a barge is not necessarily an option. There have been a few companies that have checked on barge options in Davidson County. Not sure that they've had success with that, but I do think that truck and train are 2 that you should consider as long-term options for transportation of whatever material it is, whether it's municipal solid waste, whether it's construction and demolition, any type of waste you may have, recyclables or otherwise.
And of course, we have the local hauling collection vehicles that we use ourselves. And then you're going to look at, like the city of Murfreesboro is looking into a transfer station, so that would be a different trucking operation on a larger truck going outside of the county. And then depending on what y'all choose and where it's located, you may have trucks coming into the county.
Becky, let me ask you, would the RFI identify any rail lines that could be used for commercial entities like this, that they could rent, lease, space, time?
Any of the rail lines would have the option of offering, and here in Rutherford County, they would have the option of offering transportation. CSX is the primary company here within Rutherford County, so I would say CSX would be a contact for whomever it is that would be interested in providing the rail transportation.
So would we leave it up to a potential bidder or vendor to do the legwork on finding their own transportation? If a train was something wanted to pursue, rail, if it's something they wanted to pursue, how much obligation do we need as a county to say, hey, by the way, you could call CSX so-and-so, and we are located X amount of miles from a spur? Do we have to divulge that information, or do we leave it up to the vendor to do the legwork?
I think you want a vendor that has done this before. So I think you would want a vendor that already has an established relationship with a CSX or with an RJ Corman or one of the other short lines here, in the Nashville area. But again, CSX is the one company that's here primarily in
All
Rutherford
right.
County.
So they could clearly look at a map and see that truck and interstate transportation would be very simple. We're well connected with the highway and interstate system, and they could clearly look at a train and track system around Middle Tennessee, north, south, east, and west, and can come up with their own game plan.
Yes, and I think the transportation piece is one that, it's one that Waste Management and Republic both contract out for trucking. Rail is an option in other parts of the country. We don't use it here in Middle Tennessee, but I think it's something we have to consider with congestion and roadways and such, and infrastructure.
Yeah. So all we'd have to say in an RFI is we're open to truck and train
Yes,
transportation.
and to support it
All right.
from the beginning. Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else on that? The next item is disposal 2019. I believe that is the document that you gave out a few weeks ago?
Yes.
Okay. Do you all see any need to rehash the list of landfills in the Tennessee area that Becky handed out a couple of weeks ago? All right. If you'll remember, that had potential closure dates and capacity and things like that. Moving on to special waste, you'll see several bullet points, and Mac also gave us an assignment to do at home and in your business, to remember that every time you throw something away, imagine what we're going to do with it in the long term. I made notes in my margin in regarding to special waste that also perhaps included farm animals or roadkill, things like that. I know we contract that out right now, but don't know how long that contract lasts. Certainly we would want anybody interested in that part of the equation to raise their hand and see if they had a better solution. But I guess for the audience, I'll read the bullet points. The special waste streams generated from residents, now again, we're not talking businesses, we're talking residents, would be medical waste, and a subtext would be sharps, in pharmaceuticals, sharps would be needles, things like that would be disposable. Bulky items, furniture, mattresses, electronics, batteries, oils, cooking and automotive, antifreeze, paints, which we talked about a little last night, hazardous waste materials. So, maybe we can save a little time here, unless Becky and Mac, all those things we need to have somebody talk to us about. We don't want to handle them. We don't want them to go to an illicit landfill. We don't want them to illicitly disposed of. I'm not sure how some of these items are disposed of now, but certainly we would like to just say that these are types of specialty waste that we would like to have somebody deal with. And you could just really recopy that list and add anything to it, including farm animals or roadkill and anything else we might think of. And I'll let Becky and Mac add their thoughts about what perhaps might need to be added to that list. But to me, all those need to be discussed by somebody or a group of people or technologies as to handle those separately or together or in groups. Any thoughts?
This is a list we've talked about numerous times over the past year. If there's anything missing or anything that comes to mind, I would like you just to share so that we make sure we get it on the list. This was, all encompassing for what I had in my notes that we had discussed.
You look at that list, sharps, most of that residential sharp is going to be diabetics and things like that. They can put those in a laundry detergent bottle, screw the cap on, and throw that away with their regular trash. Like as we spoke last night, they're exempt from that because they're residential. Unused pharmaceuticals, they can take those to the sheriff's department. There's a container there that will accept those. Bulky items, furnitures, and mattresses, we're still taking that at convenience centers. Electronics goes to Haley Road. Batteries go to Haley Road. Used oil has to wait for our household hazardous waste collection unless you can find a dealer that sells oil. Some of those will take up to a gallon from you. Cooking oil, we accept at 3 locations, Walter Hill, Rock Crusher, and Weekly Lane. automotive fluids, the antifreeze and all that's what we were talking about trying to do a grant for. If we ever get Leanna finished, we will have a collection for automotive fluids in that, or it's planned to have. Let me leave it that way. Latex paint, you need to dry yourself. We talked about it last night. We may have one collection November, first Saturday in November, and that'd be the only one we'll ever have for that. Oil-based paint, we can set up an appointment to bring that in. Household hazardous waste items such as pool chemicals, fertilizers, all that kind of stuff is the HHW collection. We don't have a permanent location for those.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mac, where does this hazardous material go right now? Because one of the things you say we have all these community in our convenience centers to pick this up. Where do they take it?
The hazardous material, we don't have anybody to pick up right now. That's what the state provides twice a year for us, and we're looking at funding one ourselves in November, and that will be for the pool chemicals, the pesticides, herbicides. It'll take medications, all those type of automotive fluids. It'll have to be taken there. Then the rest of these items, pretty much we're already taking. Our electronics, we have a company called Dynamics. They're actually, the home office is in Wisconsin. They have a office on Ambrose Avenue in Nashville. They pick up our electronics, and we're shipping out 2 or 3 loads a week right now. And then oil-based paint and fluorescent tubes. When we fill those containers at Haley Road where we collect them, we call TDEC, and they'll do a milk run and come pick those up with their contractor. So it doesn't cost us anything to dispose of them. We just have to collect it and then have them come get it. Right now, they do not have a contractor. I don't know where the state takes it, to answer that question. The paint they send to waste to energy somewhere, but I don't know where they send it.
So it would be safe to say that we don't want to be in this business, and that when we do an RFP, that I think that they should tell us what will they do to consider hazardous waste, because it's obvious we don't want to be in this business.
That is correct. Now, there was something we need to look at. Most people don't think it's solid waste, and the same thing is emergency management. When they have a big fuel spill or chemical spill or something like that, and the county winds up having to handle it, we have no place to store any of that type of stuff. Right now, I think we're just using private contractors that will come in, let them take care of it, and charge the owner of the vehicle the cost or something like that. I'm not sure how they handle that.
Good question, Chairman Harris, and thank you for the response. Becky, do you have anything else to add on any of those special waste streams? Or do you know where the state takes theirs?
I know that Clean Harbors has been the company they've used most recently, but as Mac said, they currently don't have a contract in place. Clean Harbors is one of those companies that deals with hazardous waste on a regular basis, so I think they probably have some pretty reliable and pretty responsible outlets for it, but I'm glad to check and find out where they take specific materials if you want me to.
Okay. Would it behoove us to have a representative from Clean Harbor come and just chat with us and pitch ideas back and forth?
We can.
I mean, do you know anybody that well that would accept an invitation?
I know a couple of folks at Clean Harbors. I'm glad to reach out and ask them if they have a person that typically does that.
I think, me personally, I think it would benefit just to have kind of a Q&A session just to find out what they do and where they send things and what they consider hazardous, and if there's any recycling that they know of any of these waste streams that we are not aware of. Since we don't want to touch it and they have to, maybe they have an end stream somewhere that we are not aware of. But
our collections if we have it in November, everything that goes on that truck will wind up going to Chattanooga, but I don't know where it goes from there.
Yeah, okay. I think it's always great to reach out to the experts and pick their brain a little bit. So if we can get them at a next meeting. Mayor, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I talked to County Mayor Rogers Anderson today over in Williamson County, and of course they're open 7 days a week. So they accept paint 7 days a week, and they use the same company to hauled it off, and I think the price I shared with you, Chairman, was $23,000.
Yeah, in the low 20s. Yeah, versus what we have, a max of 50.
We were talking max of 50 last night, but they do a pickup for about 23.5. So if we can get this company to come talk to us, you know. Becky, you said that they used to go through the state of Tennessee, through that contract, and then...
The state typically has a contract with a company that will manage and
Safe
collect.
Harbor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Clean Harbors is who they've had
Clean
the
Harbors,
contract.
yeah.
Had the contract with them most recently. They just don't have a contract in place right now.
Okay. But Williamson County's still using that same
Anyone
company.
can still, anyone can still call on them.
Okay.
You all could still call on them.
They are honoring in that price.
Yeah.
So the state doesn't have it. They're still honoring in what that bid price was.
Could we piggyback off of their contract? Okay.
Plan to do, or what I plan to do anyway, is I shared with you the numbers last night of what they gave us, and waiting to see if that's the exact same number as they bid when they bid for the state. That should happen the end of this month. So once we know what our number is, what the state number is, then we can go with either or, whichever one's the cheapest.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Commissioner P.
I know
P.
in the, business world, there are people that handle hazardous waste materials for industries, and one of them that comes to mind is Safety Clean. I don't know if that's somebody that would consider working with the county, but that's another group there. I think they're out of Texas that actually handles oils and cleaning agents, things like that, industrial waste.
Mm-hmm. All right. Safety Clean?
Yes.
All right. All right. Are we ready to move on and flip the page to landfill reclamation?
I got a question.
Yes.
I think there'll be someone to submit an RFP for our hazardous material.
You say, did anybody, or should we expect somebody?
I think there will be somebody that will submit an RFP just for the hazardous material and stuff.
Yeah, I do.
All or?
I do. I've talked to someone that is interested.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've got to think that is a profitable business that somebody would want to discuss with us and others. All right, landfill reclamation, several bullet points on that. Most of this discussion, I believe, lies around our current landfill and what we would want to do if we open that up to reclamation. How do we monitor what's excavated? What do we do with the dirt that is exhumed? What would we do with the property? Do we want to own it? Do we want to build a monument out there? What do we build a ski slope? What do we want to do? As Steve says, ski slope. So these are the kind of topics that we have under this particular heading of landfill reclamation. Becky, will you talk about bullet one and how that references and ties into the rest of the discussion?
So again, thank you for bringing the summary to light here. It's just questions that we've asked ourselves, questions that have come up in conversation. One of the questions that has been posed, or one of the comments that was posed at one point, was, would we want to re-permit that space as a Class 1 landfill just for county waste or for future use if there were an emergency or if you needed that space for something other than just an open area. In looking at the list of landfills, the most recent one that was permitted was, it's an EcoSafe. It's a private landfill in Sullivan County, and that was in 2010. So that gives you an idea of timing and time frame of as far as when the last Class 1 landfill was permitted in the state. And then the rest of those questions, you can just read, down the list as far as, do you want to own it? Do you want someone else to own it? Do you want to lease it? Do you want to build something on it? What do you want that piece of property to look like when they're done? Do you want them to exhume it all the way to the base or the rock? Or do you want it just to be, a field, like a typical landfill closure? What do you want that to look like when the reclamation is complete? Because we've tossed around a lot of different ideas, and we had at least one and maybe a couple that came in with the RFI with an idea for how to do that and what to do. So that was the question here, was what would you want that to look like once it was reclaimed?
In a perfect world, with unicorns and rainbows, we would have some vendor or series of vendors, partners, we'll call them, offer some kind of a turnkey, perhaps, solution in where we could, or they would have interest in reclaiming the materials inside our current landfill. Now, I'm not a solid waste guy, believe it or not, but it would make sense to me that you would excavate down to a level that TDEC would say, hey, that's no longer a landfill, and you no longer will be giving off methane gas, and you're clear of any hazardous material, and man, you could build a school there if you wanted. I think you have to take it down in a perfect world to that level, right? If you're gonna open up Pandora's box, you totally empty Pandora's box. So I think that's the solution. When you open that thing up, you take it all the way down to a safe level and totally purge any material that TDEC would say could be harmful or could come back to haunt us. Because ultimately, and I'm sure Craig Harris, who has voiced his opinion on this multiple times, we want to get rid of the liability, the long-term liability of that landfill, which, as we have heard numbers in, could be $30 million range for our next generation or next generations in terms of maintenance and repair on that. So we would love to be out from under that dollar amount. It's my opinion. Doesn't have to be yours, but that makes the most sense to me. So let's say you excavate down to that level. What do you do with the land? Do we build a Class 1 landfill? Well, hopefully we've partnered with somebody that's large enough that doesn't need our space, or we wouldn't need to be building our own landfill. Does the county want to be in the landfill business? Some of us would say no. Leave it to the professionals. Some of you may have a different idea, but as far as an RFI prep goes, we certainly want somebody to entertain to see if it's profitable for them to reclaim the landfill. Mac thinks that there's a fair amount of dirt in it, maybe as much dirt as there is decomposing or compressed trash. Well, the dirt we could use or the dirt we could sell, right? We can make money on it. So there's all kinds of scenarios, but these are some of these questions that we can't necessarily answer now until our potential partners say, hey, we can do this and you wouldn't have to do that. Or we can do most of this, but we need you to do a little bit of this. And until we have that kind of discussion, we're kind of crystal balling this potential topic. So I'm going to stop pontificating and let the two experts, and even you, Wayne, comment.
Well, I certainly don't want to be a pretender, but have we ever decided as a committee, and I apologize that I can't recall, have we ever decided to recommend that that we control the flow for the entire county, including all municipalities? Have we made that decision? Is that not important? I mean, in this RFI? I mean, the RFP?
It's an important question. We have not arrived on a solution or an answer to your question. By law, help me out, Mac or Becky, by law, we have to take care of our county residents, period. End of discussion. Now, do we want to be a county of the 21st century and be a high technology and as close to zero waste as possible? Do we want to be known for our recycling capabilities, or, like I said, near zero waste? If that's the case, we perhaps need to partner with a bigger group to bring more trash in, because some of these technologies, as we've all discussed, are going to take a bigger pile to produce their end product, more than the county alone can provide. So that's, again, how big of a mouth do we need to feed? We don't know yet. But
I guess my question is for Becky then, with approximately 330,000 tons of potential residential trash, is that big enough to feed most any mouth?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to have a composting operation and a MRF for separating recyclables and a waste to resource solution, if you want to have a mixture to create an integrated system, it may be. It depends on what technology you choose, and it also depends on how much volume that technology can accept or process. So you've heard us speak of this facility can take in 30 tons an hour or 200 tons a day or 600 tons a day. That's where that number becomes important. And I think that goes back to, are you going to manage or look at just the county waste that you have now, or are you going to look at all residential waste across the county based on the volume generated?
$333,000 tons, that's based on the residents, and a resident producing 1 ton of trash per year. That's where that number comes from. And if you figure the year at 365 days, which you're not going to work all of them, but if you figure that, that's 904 tons per day. We have enough trash to do some things with that much. Now, if you want to go big, like what the landfill does out there now, you're looking at 3,500 tons a day. So how big do you want to go? To back up to what Commissioner Cush was talking about earlier, I had a fairly lengthy conversation with TDEC and explained to him what I would like to see happen with our landfill. And there's some permitting going to be involved. There's going to be a hydrogeological study will have to be done to see if you could actually put another landfill there. Even though one has already existed, that doesn't mean one can go back. So there'll be some of that type of testing to see what can be done. And then my example to them we would wind up building a Class 1 cell somewhere to put the stuff in. It can't find another home. Yeah. But build it larger than we actually need, and then we put it to sleep and let it rest. And then when we have a big major disaster or something happens, and then we have a place to go.
Yeah. I think we've all understood over the past year and a half that even though the buzzword is zero waste, there really is no such thing. There's always going to be some component that will have to be landfilled. Even if it's a waste product of a waste to energy partnership, there is still going to be a waste component that has to be dealt with. So there's going to have to be a landfill somewhere. It may not have to be a very big one, but let's not kid ourselves. There's always going to be some kind of a component that will have to be, that we can't process. You can't sell, you can't process, you can't burn, or it's a byproduct of something already burned. It's just there. You can't do anything with it. It has no value.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Blair, going back to your original question about flow control, we've danced around it, we've talked about it, we've never voted on it. I think once we get into opening the RFPs, then at that point in time, sit down and negotiate about the flow control and try to work out a deal as the host county to see if we can work together on their traffic patterns, et cetera, to actually be resistant and tell them that we're going to control the flow. It becomes constitutionally suspect in my mind, and that's a legal opinion, but as a former lawmaker, I think you get into the Commerce Clause of restricting of commerce. I think we'd have to walk lightly there as far as what statement we wanted to make, so it's better to approach whoever we want to do business with and see if we can control, if they're in agreement with bringing in and saving certain routes or, from heavy damage of their trucks, et cetera. So I think once we narrow it down to that one or two, then we start working with them on what are you willing to do as the host community for us.
I think we have two ideas of flow control going at the same time. One would be the idea of flow control of the actual truck on the street. I don't know if you can control that one or not. The other would be the flow control of the trash coming into or out of our area. Those two are actually different things, but the trucking side of it, there's your e-commerce thing right there.
I think thank you, Chairman. I think, Wayne, that the flow control from the CTAS document that we got the other week is we can demand the municipal waste of Rutherford County. That's 325 estimated tons, and it's going to grow 2% per year through 2040. We can demand that product go to a certain place if there's some public ownership of that place. That's my interpretation of flow control in relation to Tennessee Code annotated. That sound somewhat accurate, Becky?
It is somewhat accurate. I would say that you have to consider that your area of responsibility is residential. So you want to be careful and not start to look at limiting the competition as far as who's collecting it and where it's going and some of the other facilities that may come to your community. That's just always a point of contention, and rightfully so.
So I think there are some, I think we could, I don't know if this is where I get confused on how deep we get involved in manipulating the RFP to get an end result, or leave it so wide open that we receive a solution. And I think we're waffling on that as a group, or even our understanding or our choices. I think there's one scenario where we could reclaim the landfill, own it, build a cell, put compost out there, lease it to someone, put a MRF out there, lease it to someone, have a end user that will receive waste energy, ship it to them, build a couple of transfer stations, and if we have ownership in some or all of that, and a partnership with a third party to help run it, or then perhaps we could demand more of that material go to those sites, and then we could guarantee the MRF operator or the compost leaseor or the waste energy receiver some certain quantities. And I think ultimately that's where we're going to have to go. And that's either decision so I'm back to my original question, do we, at the end of tonight or our next meeting, decide to manipulate this to get what we want, or shoot it out there in such a broad scope that the market tells us what we need? That's my dilemma. So we can get to that, Wayne, I think. We can guarantee somebody about 300 tons.
I don't think you want to put a MRF facility at our old landfill, just simply because the truck traffic is going to be involved. Now, if you look at composting or something like that, fewer trucks, that may be a little better solution. But if you're looking at hundreds of trucks a day going in and out of our old landfill, we're going to have some neighbor issues.
Let me just clarify that I was speaking very theoretically. I'm not suggesting. I'm suggesting we own 270 acres out there. So I'm thinking there's there's our first stewardship opportunity is to use it as best we can, and if best we can includes trucking stuff elsewhere and maybe bringing a little bit back to there, that's open. But my premise is I think we can constitutionally demand some volume of trash go to certain places if we have majority ownership of that place. And I, for one, think that's where I keep coming back to that. We build some transfer stations, we own them, we demand trash go there, and we demand where it goes next. And we have ownership in something to a degree where we can tell other counties they can't come here. If we privatize too much, then we're going to lose control of the volume and right back where we've been to some degree uncomfortable with a big private enterprise handling all of it. And we have another issue like a probation office. Sometimes the probation office was a big learning point for me. I've always been for privatizing as much government as possible. And as a county commissioner in the last 8 years, I realized some things government just has to do. So the probation office is a wake-up call that perhaps we can take that analogy and place it here. Some of this we may have to do to be the best bang for the buck. Just some thoughts.
Mr. Piercy.
I feel like we're just a little early on this flow control situation, because when we start getting the RFPs in, those people are going to tell us what they have to have and how many tons they'll have to have. And I think we're just a little premature on this. I believe we should wait and see what they tell us they need to take care of our problem, and then we'll spend the time and nights working on it. But I believe we should wait on that. Not taking anything away from you, Mr. Dodd.
No, if I may build on that, and I asked the open-ended question: are we going one way or another? And you shared your opinion is that one way. I'm wide open to that may be the way. Cast a big broad net, and we may throw it all out and throw out another RFP with strict demands 5 years from now. I don't know, Steve, but I'm wide open to whatever this 7 and the future 21 concur with.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Chairman Harris.
I kind of agree with Phil Dodd to a point. I think we should be direct. I think we should not throw a big, broad net out there. I think we should exactly tell them what we want. And just for an example, if they want to bring in trash from another county, then they will have to pay a host fee. And when they do pay that host fee, then they had to be able to negotiate with us the amount of years, because it's not going to be like it was before. We're not going to make a deal in 1992, and in 2020, we still got the same prices. You have to look at all situations. We don't know which way we're going. We know that. But I think that we should be as direct as possible, because when we need to know what the price is going to be, we need to know what they're going to do. And then when we start throwing stuff out there and say, well, we want you to do this. Well, that's not fair to the other people that are bidding. So that's how I feel about that. And I agree with Commissioner Dodd to a point. But I think, I really do believe that we should be, this is us. This is Rutherford County making these deals, and Rutherford County needs to be specific about what it wants.
All right, well said. Mac or Becky, do you have an opinion in terms of developing and formulating this RFP on rifle shot approach versus shotgun approach?
I would say this is a wicked problem. That's why it's in the government hands. Typically, that's where these problems land, because there's a lot of conversation, there are a lot of different avenues, and there are a lot of different things that you have to consider. As far as the flow control issue, I think you have to wait to see what you get and what you're looking at, because you're not sure what volume they'll need. I do believe there has to be a balance between wide open and specific, because if you don't know what you want, then how are you going to evaluate what you get?
I think we need to kind of decide what our answer is going to be. What will we be happy with? If it was Christmas time and you was asking your parents for Christmas presents, what would you ask for? Then we build backwards, and that's where you build your RFP to get you what you wanted.
I agree.
Well, I'm just thinking that the city is collecting curbside, and they're doing about the same amount, just a little less than what we're doing. We're collecting countywide. Basically, our collection is our convenience centers. So that's 44,000 tons. They're doing about a little less than that tons, 80-something thousand tons. So you got another 250,000 tons that is being collected some other way, through the private, I guess, because they're not going to convenience center. They're not being collected in the city. So unless we're planning on setting those standards for Rutherford County through the state, I guess, of collection house, can we mandate that part, that piece of the puzzle? Or do we want to? I mean, that's a huge question. As far as your landfill, if somebody's interested in that, they've got to be interested in what they need. So that's going to be dirt. They've got dirt there. They're going to be interested in maybe the trash that's buried there. There's some sort of value for that, I assume, somewhere in there. And then you've got the rest of that acreage out of that 72 acres that's got a value to it as far as dirt itself, or the possibility of being permitted for another landfill or not. I mean, we've if that happened, we would have to give our county our thumbs up on that, right, Becky? Or is that strictly a state?
You own it.
I know, but I'm saying
And-
if it were to be purchased or
If
bought
you
or whatever, I mean,
if you own it or you lease it to someone, obviously you have that. I mean, it's still yours.
right.
And you have the agreement that says this is what shall or shall not be done. If it's sold, I would still think you would have a say-so in it.
Yeah.
And you can always say that when you sell it. We still want to have a say-so in it. And I would ask, do you want to lease it or do you want to sell it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a piece of property. Do you sell the 200-plus acres, or do you keep them and lease it? And
But do we have to spell that out in that RFP? We
I
can,
mean, I think
we can leave this open and actually see what kind of, like you were talking about a while ago, see what kind of RFPs we get. Yeah, and that's where Commissioner's coming from.
You can leave it open for sure. I think you need to have in your mind, are you willing to lease it and still have the ownership and may or may not have liability? We'd have to, you'd have to see what that looks like. Or do you just sell it?
Because ultimately, the commission's thumb up or thumb down on whatever plan
Yes, sir.
come up with. Yeah.
Another landfill in means we have to go get a new permit for a Class 1 facility, which ours is closed. Permit. Jackson law will apply, so it will have to come through county commission and the city of Murfreesboro, because they're within a mile of it. So either one of those two committees could stop it right there.
I'm sorry, repeat that. If we reclaimed our landfill and elected to do a sale, we would have to start from scratch on the permit.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman.
New state, direction as far as what that sale would look like. In the case we were doing a MRF or whatever, we were cycling and combination of all 3 or 4 pieces, but that 5% that they say is definitely going to the landfill, we would landfill our own 5%. That's what you're saying, I guess.
You could. That's not what y'all talked about the other night. The other night when y'all was speaking of it is what we dig up out of the landfill that can't go anywhere else, we would rebury in the landfill, but not bring anything from off the property into that. Now, you could change your mind on that, but that's kind of the way it went last time.
Commissioner Blair and then Chairman Harris.
The 250,000 tons that the deputy mayor referred to, we presently do not know where that's going. We assume some of it's going to Middle Point, but we don't know that all 250,000 tons are going to Middle Point presently.
Sure, all are not going to Middle Point.
Yeah.
Private sector, if you own a landfill anywhere close and you're picking it up with your truck, you're going to take that trash to your landfill, not to Middle Point.
And there's no way to glean that information anywhere, I suspect.
PR report will have a little bit of that. It won't be 100% accurate, but it will. The haulers have to tell where their loads are generated from. Now, where you get into discrepancies is if you went to Monteagle Mountain and started picking up a load of trash and working your way back to Middle Point, and you finished the load here in Rutherford County, you could name any county you wanted to between here and there.
Chairman Harris.
Yeah, my question's for Becky. On reclaiming the landfill, you said that we could own it or lease it. In what scenario would we ever would want to lease with someone or partnership with somebody on a landfill?
If you still want to have ownership and you have a purpose for that property after the fact, so you reclaim it and you want to have that class 1 sale, or you want to have that space for future debris from natural disaster, that's when you want to have ownership. That's when you would lease it to them for whatever purpose, whether it's just the reclamation or, whatever, to whatever point in that process you wanted them to get to. But you can also sell it. I mean, if people know what they're buying, there is value there.
But if I'm in partnership or if I'm leasing it, I still have the liability of it. Would that not be correct?
That depends on how you set up the agreement on it, but yes, I would think you do still have some liability for it because you do own it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dodd.
Craig, that brings me back to my point. I would, if we reclaimed it to such a successful degree that the liability was mitigated, and then we would want to own it, perhaps to keep it out of the hands of a global landfill operation. Of course, it would have to go back through a permit. I would only consider owning it to protect it, Craig, if we had mitigated liability. So we may never have sufficient mitigated liability to even consider owning it. So I would acquiesce to you immediately. But at the same time, if we had enough mitigation, I would consider owning it to protect it. That's all. If it's better to sell it for some purpose, man, I'm all for it. But that's just some thoughts.
Good
Well,
stuff.
I agree with you. The thing that I think that most of y'all know about me, and we've been together for 2 years, is I am wanting to get the county out of the liability of the unknown factors of the county landfill. Nobody can tell us that there's anything bad, good, or anything. I know we did a bore test, but until we get in there and open it up, we don't know. So I have always been for releasing the liability on this county, and that's one of the things that that I'm going to support. But I just feel like I just feel like when we start talking about ownership and leasing and all that, we start taking on liabilities that we don't know about.
Yep. Good points. Becky, what else do we need to chat about so you're better prepared to craft this chapter of RFP? And again, in the perfect world, we would love somebody to reclaim our landfill, take it down to bare ground, and to the point where TDEC would release us from liability. After that, we've discussed different options of the land. I'm in agreement with Craig and Phil. I would love to own a safe piece of property to A, store debris during a storm, extra storage, park county vehicles on there, but more importantly, have a buffer. You know, put a moat around it, keep it from being invaded. So I want you to make sure you have the ammunition you need from this body. So if there's anything, questions, hard questions you want to ask us, now would be a good time to do that.
I think we're good with the comments and the feedback.
All right. That was good discussion. Anything else you want to chat about on that particular topic? The two things we didn't chat were on the very bottom. One was accepting tires at the existing landfill or accepting brush. I think we've already had some, on the RFI, I think we've already had some folks talk about tires. Mm-hmm. Certainly, if there's money to be made, we want to chat with somebody about tires. Secondly, about brush, continue accepting brush. We're still, for now, I don't know how long we can continue doing that, but again, in a perfect world, if we had a reclaimed landfill and had new raw land sitting out there, we could perhaps do something with brush, or turn it into something usable, or burn it. I don't know, but we'll always have to deal with brush and debris. There's smarter folks out there that are doing that can help us and guide us on that. All right. Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Nolan. What did we actually learn from our core drilling?
Learned that there's quite a bit of dirt in the landfill mixed in with the trash. We learned that the trash is not as deep in some places that we thought there was, and it's deeper in some other places than we thought it was. And then the other core drilling kind of showed me there was one thing I wanted to see was I'd always suspected tires buried in one location. There are no tires there, or we didn't hit any when we drilled it anyway.
Did any of the drilling holes show how deep the contamination could possibly be in that dirt?
I don't know that I can answer that question. Jeff Postel probably can. What we attempted to do is drill all the way through the trash to the bottom to get to bedrock to see how much dirt was between the bottom of the landfill and rock. We didn't find any. When they did testing, they didn't test any contaminants that alarmed us or anything, if that's what you're asking. But I don't know how deep underneath. When you get to the bottom of the landfill, how many more feet are they going to say is contaminated? I don't know the answer to that.
So the core drilling didn't tell us that.
Yeah, it may have. I don't know that. I'd have to contact Jeff and ask him that question.
Do we need to have that gentleman an invite to this body's meeting and have a little Q&A with him? Or is that something Matt can handle over the phone?
I'm not really sure who you need to invite, but my thoughts on reclaiming that property right there, we need to reclaim that landfill down to a safe position and get whoever we need to sign off on it that it's good, because the future's coming. The one next to it is going to have issues somewhere, and we need to be clear of that, so in the future they can't say, well, it could be Rutherford County. If we mine this out and clean it clean, it's not our problem. It'll be the neighbor's problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So, Mac, I would ask you then to ask the geotechnical expert as to if he could describe his findings in layman's terms to us. And I think the question is, did you test, or can you tell, or could you test for a very low dollar amount if there's anything of hazardous material that could kill the deal for us.
Testing they've done already shows no hazardous material. That doesn't mean there's none there. It's just they didn't find any.
They didn't find any, yeah. Okay, very good. Just a general report that, written in English that we can, we can understand.
Want a written report, or you want him to come here to answer questions?
A verbal synopsis or a written synopsis that laymen like ourselves could understand.
Got one other thing. The core drilling, did it show you where you drilled through the deepest trash? Did it give a evidence of how much dirt was between the trash and the bedrock?
Yes.
Was it very much, or do you recall?
In places, it's quite a bit. In places, there's as much as 7 feet layer of dirt between trash.
Thank you.
I guess something else that would be interesting is to what level of decomposition was found. You know, certainly you would think as the deeper you drilled, the more decomposition you may have. That may be a huge assumption because lack of oxygen may not deteriorate that material down deep. I don't know. But I would be curious, and when you ask that question, is can you detail or graph the? I mean, I'm curious if when he bored down, he pulled out a newspaper that was dated 1957, and if it was legible, you know.
Most of that was already gone. In our conversation with TDEC, I posed the question that what materials that went into our landfill years ago that made it a Class 1 type facility should be already deteriorated by now. So whatever we dig out would probably meet Class 3 standards. And they said it's probably a good chance of that. You'd have to do some testing to prove it. Williamson County is doing some stuff similar to that today. So if you permitted to put stuff back, then you may not have to permit a Class 1 facility. You could possibly do a Class 3. Then you'd have to decide is where you want to go for the future, and what do you want to limit yourself to a Class 3.
All right, very good. All right, the last bullet is the general, kind of the catch-all portion of the RFP. These bullets vary from point to point. So Becky, as the author of this, I'm going to let you just comment and ask the questions on what our thoughts might be or desires might be, again, so you can craft those into a sufficient RFP.
So the data that we shared with them, well, with the public in the RFI, was the population information with projected population, the tons of Class 1 municipal solid waste that was landfilled, the different categories of recyclables, and the tonnage there. And the question I would have is there anything that you all, in what you've read, is there anything that you think or that you believe we should share or that would be helpful to you if it were shared and you got feedback on it? So is there anything missing there that as you read through other information from the RFI, is there anything more you would want information to share with them for them to give feedback on? I mean, I think those are typically the keys, the key information that we shared.
Thoughts? Chairman?
I think that the probably no more information. You had a high and a low potential for amounts. You had a recycle table, a tonnage table, 1 yard per resident, hypothetical. So.
Thank you. One of the other questions, and I'm not going to read all of these, we mentioned financial stability. What would financial stability look like? You know, is it so many years in business? Is it I don't want to say publicly traded, but is that something you're looking at? Is that what you consider financially stable? What is considered financially stable?
Wouldn't most corporations have a Dun and Bradstreet, and that maybe that would be a way to judge their financial health?
I'm not so sure about what a small entity might have in terms of financials that we could ask for. I don't know.
I think even your smaller entities are probably encompassed today.
Yeah, run a D&B on all of them. Okay. I guess this part is kind of like, well, I'm not going to use that analogy. You certainly want successful, you want their technology to be successful in other locations, right? You want a proven track record. You don't want to call whoever they are currently partnering with in some other state, and you want to be able to hear nothing but high praise about their technology. That kind of stuff is easily vetted. We don't want to be a guinea pig, unless we're going to get in on the low end, good buddy price with a lot of guarantees. But I think we'll know a solid company when we see one, just through the discussion process and running some financials. And, I think the cream will rise to the top fairly obviously. But to say that, I think it's important that we vet everyone from a financial aspect as well as a character aspect, and be sure and follow up on references and make sure the reference is not their brother-in-law, but somebody they really have partnered with, good and bad. Steve?
Prior businesses, when I was an account manager with a company, we did a lot of business overseas. We did a lot of business in other states. And so a simple letter of credit from whatever banking establishment they dealt with pretty much proved who we were doing business with, because whether we were ordering, $5, $8, $10, $15 million worth of merchandise at a time, then we needed to know who we were doing business with and what kind of business structure they were dealing with to be able to get the products that we were ordering on time, whether they were in container, however they were shipped, rail or truck. And a good old-fashioned letter of credit solved 99.9% of our issues.
Yeah.
So if we knew that they were, 200 million deep, or they were, 200 billion deep, then we knew who we were dealing with. And if it was a low, number in that letter of credit, then that's someone we're not dealing with.
Yeah. So I think a simple way to state that is, to put the bullet out there that all serious candidates, we will run a D&B, ask for financials, ask for references, ask for history. I mean, that's a simple 2-line demand. So, all right. Becky, what else would you like us to solve under the general topic?
We've answered most of these in conversation over the past few weeks or the past few meetings.
I see one there about the public-private partnership. This is just me talking. I'm not opposed to a public-private partnership under the right conditions, the right terms. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm open to any discussion and to any business proposition that somebody might have with us.
And then that was what I had actually noted from before. Thank you.
Becky and I had a discussion, more of her talking and me listening, and I actually listened. If we're extremely lucky, we get RFPs to where we do nothing. We just wind up being a customer.
Yeah, yeah,
Locate here.
yeah. That is the unicorn scenario.
And that's where you actually just support the private companies as they come here and help them have a presence here, allow them to go ahead and have customers of their own as you continue to use Middle Point Landfill at no disposal fee, and they build their business. And there will be a point in time in the future, whether that's 5 years from now or 20 years from now, that Middle Point Landfill is full. And at that point, you then have choices. And you can have a bid process where your infrastructure is built and you actually are in a position where you're just simply going out to bid for the services you need as a county.
Commissioner Piercy?
Glad you brought that up because nobody really knows how long they're going to be in operation. And we're fixing to turn out this RFP, and hopefully we'll get some results back by the end of the year for a decision of whatever. Now, I know we're not dumb enough that we're going to leave free dumping as long as it's out there. How is that time lapse going to affect what the RFP is pricing? Like, you know, most everybody we've seen give a demonstration or a presentation, they're talking 2 years from the word go. Okay, what if it's 5 years? We still got 5 years of life in free dumping at Republic. Now, how is that 3-year gap going to affect their 2-year price that they're going to put in their RFP?
Mac has a comment.
If we do what we think we're trying to do, or what I think you are trying to do, then we develop bid specs for curbside collection for all municipalities and the large subdivisions within the county. That's where the flow control would be involved, and that we bid it out. We're going to pay you, Mr. Company, for picking up all these homes, but you're going to dump it right over here. That's the way we control that trash. Our convenience center trash will continue to go to Middle Point until it closes. And I would suspect Murfreesboro City Trash would do the same thing.
Not for an arguing point, but why would we hire and pay a company to do curbside pickup when it can go to Middle Point for free until they close?
Because all that you're going to hire to be done is not what we're managing today. More than half of the county is already picked up privately. We're just getting what's not picked up, which is the real rural areas. Now, we're picking up some that's inside as well.
But we're not paying to have it picked up, correct, at this point?
Correct.
I'm done.
Well, do you want to continue that conversation? Because I'm not sure I'm totally clear, and I'm not sure your question was totally answered. Want to let it lie, or do you want to continue some discussion?
We are quickly coming to the point that it's going to be harder and harder to manage what we currently have with the Rutherford County Solid Waste System. And I'm talking about our system only, not Murfreesboro's, leaving them out of it. We don't do curbside collection. We're not set up for curbside collection. But we can continue to do what we're doing. If you put it out for bid, and then a lot of those homes wind up getting picked up privately, going where we say it goes, and they pay a monthly fee or a yearly fee, whatever that user fee is going to be, then our centers will stay intact and stay in place. They will decrease a little bit, but over the years, as the population increases, they will increase again. 3.3% increase for the last 15 years is what we've experienced. That's a 45% increase over a 15-year period. We've not changed the centers hardly any in that time period.
All right, so I think Commissioner Piercy's question was, if we hire a private company to pick up large subdivisions only and direct them to take that to Middle Point, the customers paying the service for that pickup, is that still a free dump at Middle Point for us?
No.
No. It's not, but no, it's still in the county. But yeah, I guess it does change ownership then, doesn't it? Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, and I don't live in a big subdivision, but there are large subdivisions out there where we are. They all use the convenience center, basically. They're not going to pay somebody to pick up their trash when they can take it to the convenience center and throw it away for nothing until all this comes to a head, till we make a decision. And then we're back to the 2 to 3 year gap on how long we've got free dumping at Republic to whenever they close.
That brings us back to last night's question when it was mentioned that we charge the people at the HHW a small amount, and we decided not to. We're not going to get through this process without the residents of Rutherford County paying a whole lot more than they're currently paying. There's no way we're going to have free disposal, and there's no way anybody's going to come in here and take over our operation and pay us to do it. We're going to pay for it one way or another.
That was one of the reasons I made mention of charging a small fee last night, was try to help break the ice on what's coming in the near future. You know, it might not have been a whole lot, might not have made any difference on what we take in versus what it's going to cost us to do the hazard waste collection, but it would have been a beginning. That was my thinking on that.
Very good. Becky and Mac, let's continue on.
One of the things we did not, we discussed it early on, but then we didn't come back to it to actually finalize it, was we decided we would do this for the RFP, but what criteria do you want to look at, and what points do you want to give each criteria when we actually start to evaluate the RFPs? And that's not something we need to decide tonight. It's just think about what those things should be weighted, what that matrix should look like when you start to evaluate those.
And I think Craig and I, we that was kind of where we wanted to see. I think I need to see the RFP as a document to start
Exactly.
doing criteria and weight.
Yeah. If you Google RFPs, you will find a plethora of stuff to weed through. And through that plethora, there is a handful of really good documents that frame some really good questions to ask, and some measuring tools on the criteria that Becky's talking about. So, I'm all about plagiarism's a strong word, but I call it research. So
That's right.
You can gain a lot of research information from folks that have gone before us. Becky, again, this is your circus, and we're the monkeys. I want you to get all you can out of us before you attempt because the next step for Becky is to draft the RFP. So I want her to use this time wisely to ask any questions that she may still be fuzzy about.
I think I have a pretty clear direction. Most all the questions have been answered, or the conversation has been valuable to actually put that into writing, and then also make it statements as opposed to questions, which was the goal. And I would just say, as we start to look at that time frame in between, if something, and I want to be real careful and say there is not anything happening at Middle Point tomorrow, but if something happened at Middle Point tomorrow, you would have options of using other landfills using the trucks you have. That wouldn't be a long-term solution by any means, but you would at least have an opportunity for a short-term solution right away. Obviously, it would cost money. Obviously, there would be many miles, driven, put on the trucks you have and that type of thing. A lot of overtime for your drivers, but there would at least be an option.
All right, Mayor, well, do you? Okay, they've all said you have the right to speak first if you'd like.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Becky's got a pretty good handle on it. She's prepared to go forward with all these questions. It's been a good exercise. I think her emphasis will be tomorrow night when I present the budget, the professional services agreement to hire her that you all approve. So I'll be presenting that tomorrow night, the budget, to bring her on board. Her last day, I believe, at GNRC is on the 9th of October. So she'll be representing us under this contract I'll present tomorrow night, the budget. That will be her emphasis to work for us
Very good.
in a great manner.
All right, this side of the room had questions.
To help Becky, or it would help me if I was trying to do her job anyway, we've read and heard about several different presentations of what options we may have. List your top 3. That's your Christmas list. If we had the money, when we wanted to do it, what's the top 3 waste energy, compost, MRF, C&D, landfill, recycling? What's the most important to you? And that will help her craft the direction that thing goes.
I think mine is transfer stations seem to be a logical component of good logistics. Second, I think a MRF somewhere in the county, preferably near I-24 or the rail north, and from the MRF, a compost operation. I want to see waste energy shipped, perhaps, instead of building a waste energy unproven. And I think the final is, I think we need a hole to bury the percentage that's remaining. And I think that hole already exists.
Would you say that last part again?
I think
Phil?
that that was a goofy way to say it. Forgive me. I think that the final part of my dream is at least a class 3, to take a small percentage of locally grown trash or locally the waste product of MRF / compost / waste energy, whatever that percentage is. Perhaps we waste it here in a brand new, newly lined, newly permitted type class 1, 2, or 3 or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, I met with a gentleman from out of state last week. I promised I wouldn't share his name with the committee at this point in time because of proprietary information. He did not participate in the RFI, but he is interested, and he will be making a presentation to us. So go ahead and get Mac's suggestion of top 3, but there's going to be some more that come in. The one that is interested, very interested in talking to us with his RFP, because he doesn't want other people to know what he's going to present. But it deals with, Commissioner Dodd, it deals with rail. He has an interest in rail. So I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. A lot of people want our business. So I'm kind of anxious to see what all comes out. So we'll just task Becky with moving forward and get us ready.
Rail would be part of that transportation, but it could also be part of everything that you listed. Every one of those items could be put on rail.
Yeah. Has to be touched. Yeah. Has to be touched, and the secret to making money is touch it as few times as possible, right? So.
I'll try one more time. This is for Becky. Do you feel like the people that submit an RFP will put a time limit on their offer and their price?
Time limit as far as how long it will take them to be up and running, to actually start?
How long they will stick to the price they give us?
We can put that in the RFP to that this pricing is what we would expect to be there for the duration of 5 years or a period of time. I think asking someone to keep a price for 5 years is questionable. I think the price may be a little bit higher on the front end, but typically a CPI increase is what you see in contracts.
Anybody that's a serious business person won't give you a 5-year price. Not in today's world.
Well, I don't know. Republic did a few years ago, and that wasn't in today's world, but they did a few years ago. Didn't realize how fast we were going to grow here. However, the gentleman I talked to last week, he said he'll probably shoot us 20 years.
I didn't understand the last part.
Yeah, he said he would probably shoot 20 years to us in his proposal.
Could you reframe the question in an RFP and ask how long they would hold the price for? No?
But, yeah, you can ask the question. I just think there has to be there obviously has to be a limit, but I do think that people value the ability to be here and the
Usually
geography,
a CPI,
the location.
1.5 to 3% annual.
And that's pretty standard in government contracts.
But who knows, 20 years from now, 15 years from now, we might be making trash out into diamonds with monkeys on wheels or something.
You heard it here
I
first.
don't think me and you will, T. But
You heard it here first. We may be eating it in 20 years. Who knows?
Mr. Chairman, I'll leave you for the thought for the day since we're about to wind up. We're growing still by the Chamber of Commerce numbers, 23 people a day times 365 days in a year. That's 8,395 tons per year times 5. That 5 years, that puts us to what we're collecting right now. So it's great timing that this committee and the commission and the mayor is putting something together to try to solve our issues.
Will you send that link to Becky so she could add that link to the RFP so people can go on the chamber website and see that information?
No,
Or did
I
you
just got
make-
that from the chamber, so I did the math in my handy dandy.
I get that part, but
Send that link.
it's
would you?
important. It's important.
Yeah.
I think that anybody should have access to the population
sir.
growth that the,
Mr.
that
Chairman,
the chamber
we'll get that to
pontificates.
her.
Yeah, they can do math, but they need to understand our growth rate. Anything else, people?
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry. Let's hear from Robert P. first. I'm sorry, Shanto.
something we discussed in the past, and I just kind of want to update on. We had talked about the ownership of the current landfill, and if we sold that landfill, what the consequences might be as far as Republic or someone else extending the landfill that's out there. And we were going to ask for a Attorney General's opinion, I believe, and maybe ask our legislators to get that done for us. Have we got any information along those lines yet?
I don't recall any discussion about Attorney General or legislative. Do you remember, Rachel?
I don't recall. I think we discussed it, but we didn't take a clear direction on getting an AG's opinion, but we can reach out to any one of our members, our delegation, and it has to be requested by one of our members of the delegation to get an AG opinion on that. And if we sell it, can we be relieved of that liability forever?
Chairman Cush, you had made the comment you were going to try to get a survey of the property around it, and that's about the only thing I can recall.
Yeah, I do, and I do have that, and that will be on your iPads at our next meeting. But I do have it's actually in Steve's office now. That foam board that's behind your chest or your bookcase. I have a blow-up map of both landfills and all the surrounding property owners, because I wanted us to understand that in the potential of, some kind of a land grab for expansion or anything else, we could see what properties we own, what properties that are in private hands, and just see, where things could expand if they wanted to expand via a map of property owners.
A little closing thought for the night.
Okay.
We were wondering what we could do with the 280 acres if the landfill was reclaimed and it was back to farmland, we could turn it into a large park and dedicate it to the people of Walter Hill for putting up with the landfill for 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
Think about that a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously, it could be anything and it would be better than what they got.
Canto?
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. After I read several from companies and listened Mary guide to the East Tennessee and Manchester and so on and so forth, I strongly support like the idea Commissioner Dodd's, suggestion like compost and transportation. That would be a great idea.
All right. We have 2 for composting. I'm not going to divulge my favorites yet because I want to see what happens in an RFP. I'm going to keep my powder dry right now. Yeah, I'm going to sandbag it. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Robert P., you okay? You good to go?
Yeah, I'm all right. I would like to get an answer to that.
Yeah.
If we were to sell that property, if that means getting one of our legislators to go ahead and do that, I'd like to see that happen.
All right, Rachel, will you put that in the minutes? And I guess, Mayor, that would fall on your hands to reach out to one of our representatives. All right. Gentlemen, we've had a busy week, busy 48 hours, or 24 hours, I guess, isn't it? So I want to thank you all again. Oh, yes, next meeting. Becky is on a little bit of a hiatus until August 12th, I believe. October 12th. So her plan is to have a rough draft of the RFP in our hands somewhere around the 1st of October.
Every one of those commissioners are texting.
Well, I guess that would be around our next Public Works, yeah, because that would be the first Tuesday of the month. So our next Public Works meeting, she's targeting to have a rough draft of the RFP for us to review, digest, and then discuss at our next solid waste meeting, which will have to be after the 12th of October, because that's when Becky will return in full capacity. So, is that okay with you, Phil, to wait until we schedule after the Public Works meeting, or do you want to try and pin it down close?
No, 100%. I'm just making sure I have a special meeting on my calendar, and in this case, I don't. So
Okay.
Our next meeting is October the 6th, and it's a regular Tuesday night meeting.
A regular
at
Public Works Committee meeting. All right. But then we hope that Becky, part of our discussion will be to hand out that draft, give it a quick review during Mac's report, and then we will then schedule our solid waste committee, and that will have to be after the 12th, sometime after the 12th of October. So we've worked really hard the last week or two, 3 weeks, 4 weeks really. So I guess you're kind of getting a little hiatus for a week or so. So use it wisely, my friends. All right, meeting adjourned.